Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody inside and outside the ballpark. My name is NovedPlayer, and welcome to episode 69 of the Noved Notes podcast. Yes, that's a funny number. Today, we have a community leader who I actually met very recently through a good friend of mine, Roy Ako, who had been previously on the podcast. We have the leader of a VRC Boxing community known as C.O.A. Boxing. We have Yagi Kuzumaki. Yagi, welcome on. How you doing?
I'm actually doing wonderful.
Awesome. So, just to kind of get into things, what got you started into VR chat in the first place?
Oh, this that's actually a different story far from going into C.O.A. Boxing. When I first joined VR chat, and that was approximately about 5 to 6 years ago, I had the idea at first that was, I know just off of thinking and seeing the platform as it is. My first immediate thought was, I know that there's going to be like sad people here. I know there's going to be broken people here. I know for a fact that there's going to be people with, if not possible disabilities, then definitely people on a mental scale who are not okay or need some help or something like that in general. And my first idea was like, at least if I could give an ear or some type of a support to somebody somewhere at all and be able to help them, then that's an okay idea that I wanted to have, and I wanted to keep that for me. And that's how I ended up starting out in VR chat. That was my goal. That was my little journey for at least my beginning days, until that turned into more things later on.
No, fair enough. Yeah, and obviously there's many different people of many different paths of life. So kind of to go into things a little bit. So first and foremost, how did you find out about the VRC boxing scene?
VRC boxing actually came around when I was actually looking for something else to do. Because before that, I was really, really big on the Gundam Down game in particular. I was really, really big on that. I was one of the better competitors to go by and actually play. My favorite thing to do in there was basically the Car 98, or basically like the one-shot combo, and just kind of just hip fire like a cowboy all day. That's what I like to do in there. But when that was dying down and people didn't really want to play it anymore, I was like, okay, at some point I got to accept it that the game's dying and try to be able to find something else to do. So I poked around other games to try and play. It was a little bit dry of the selection at the time, and then I saw that, and at the time it was only in Japanese, so I was like, I'm interested. Purely because it's like, had the look, even though it's in Japanese, but advertised something I always wanted to try that I didn't have the opportunity to do. Went inside and saw this fluctuation of people, and I saw boxing legitimate in there, even though it was a little bit loud. I was like, I want to give this a try. I would genuinely give this a try. That'd be nice.
No, that's what's up, man. I would say, yeah, it's kind of crazy because I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. They're always looking for something, and then they find a totally different thing that they're passionate about in this platform. It's definitely a wild thing if you really think about it. But kind of in a sense, you just kind of found something you're passionate now that you never thought would be, you didn't think that would be the ideal path until then.
Yeah, absolutely. Going into it and actually giving it a try. Originally, I had this one specific avatar, and I always keep it as a matter of archiving my journey. That went ahead. First thing I did was exercise the practice martial arts that I already did. And apparently, no one else had really seen it before and put it in action, and they got their own interest out of it. But I started to learn very quickly on just how different that game felt, especially compared to Udon Boxing, because going to play Udon Boxing, it was kind of just on almost felt like local more than it felt global hit size, and it felt biased on if you do certain mechanics that seemed unrealistic in order to play and be efficient at it. Then turn around and try that, and I was like, I actually feel like I'm actually fighting. I actually feel like that I can actually be able to make hits and make the hits correctly on impact for how much more work I'm actually doing. And I loved that as itself, and then saw the community at the time that I was first starting out, and I absolutely fell in love with it. After that, I pretty much settled in right immediately with VRC Boxing. I kept coming back every so often. At some point, it was like almost every day.
That's what's up, man. Yeah, that's cool. Um, so obviously when it, going, from learning about VRC boxing into kind of the community side of things. So what made you like want to build this community for VRC boxing when it comes to like the North American USA side?
Before I gotten into the ideal of making a community, it was at least putting in the practice of to establish my presence first. Because at least this is the way how I thought, at least at the time, was just like, you're like starting out fresh, you're new, nobody in the community wise like kind of knows who you are, so in some way shape or form, like at least positively be able to like make a name for yourself, make your established presence known. And at some point I just kept working hard towards me trying to get better and better, and that grew into me constantly winning, and then people kind of seeing that I had this kind of record starting to build, and then progressing with that, then other eyes started to notice me, and then I had the more of the establishment and the presence to be like, okay, now I want to try to progress on making a team. I want to try to progress on making a community after that, at that point. Once we got there, then I started to establish, trying to make a team that was a branch off of my regular community.
Oh, that's what's up. So I guess kind of to go into a little bit more details of it. So what made you come up? Well, it's an acronym, I know, but like, what made you come up with the name of your community?
It's honestly more simple than it really seems. And so C.O.A Boxing is a branch of just specifically of this team that's off of my regular community, which is the Cult of Aaru. As it is from its ideal position, I have been taking a whole lot more of my time into this branch than I have been in my regular community, and I will not be afraid to admit it because it has been quiet for a while ever since I've been working hard on the ideal of doing the boxing team, because it's been my passion for over a year.
Oh, fair. I would say it definitely, I mean, that's crazy to say the least that, you made this community and then you have a whole boxing sector. Because obviously when it comes to communities, usually it's pretty one-sided when it comes to like what they're doing and everything, but to kind of branch off and to do another type of activity, that's really cool. Not a lot of communities can say that. So, kind of to go into more of your origins and VRC boxing again. So what was it like getting into the ring for the first time of VRC boxing? Like, kind of run me through the process of like, what was the mindset of you doing like your first experience of VRC boxing?
I took my time to go through the world and kind of read and pick up what I can from the community, even if I didn't understand everything that was there. But stepping into was the carpet for the first time, because at the time the world was divided with like one singular wide staircase that kind of cut through part of the middle of the world, and there was a ring 1, ring 2, carpet, then ring 3, and the carpet was always the hottest spot at the time. So at that point, hopped in and was like, you know what, I'm gonna give it a try and just do what I know. And getting the full first experience on either a win or a loss on both ends. Winning, it felt amazing because I felt like I actually worked for it. I didn't have to use some type of like bullshit mechanic. I didn't have to cheat in any way. Like, it was just straight actual fighting, straight actual. I need to punch I need to dodge, I need to weave, I need to pivot, and etc. Going forward. And I'm like, I worked for it. And if the satisfaction you get out of it and then being able to win that way, genuinely, it was actually amazing. Now, losing, I didn't have frustration. I didn't have anger. I didn't have sadness out of it. I was like, they were better than me in this instance. And as it is, I actually have something to work with to learn. And I loved that idea so much. And if anything, I feel like that's might be the one reason that made me keep coming back so much, besides how much I loved the community at the time for what I was introduced to. I loved the idea that I actually had opportunity to learn off of what I lost. And I always idolized the times that I lost more, because the ideal learning process, especially when you have the potential to grow, you have the potential to actually understand, like, what did you do wrong? What did they do that was better than you? And going into the idea of how do I become better it's amazing for me. It is.
No, that's awesome. It's definitely good to have like learning experiences when it comes to these types of things, because it means there's always somewhere to improve. If you just kept winning and winning and winning, you're not really learning anything. You just know that you have power or technique or whatever the case may be, but at least, with loss comes learning. It comes a lesson. It's that's definitely cool that you're taking these losses in stride and learning from them, because I mean that's good sportsmanship first and foremost, but or good athleticism. I don't even know what the word is. Words are hard. But you get the point. It's definitely a good thing to take those losses and learn from them and take them in stride, rather than some people being sore losers and all that. Or think of people as biased. If you know, you know. Well, speaking of that, since I've kind of tangented already on this in a bit, so we actually had met through a mutual friend of ours, Roy Ako, which there's a video out now. If y'all haven't seen that video, you should definitely go check it out. We had Roy go up against Yagi here in a little exhibition match, just to kind of it's Roy. He's a goober. He likes to throw himself into challenges, so he decided to fight Yagi here. We'll throw some footage up on the screen. But so I guess kind of to go into things. So how, in your personal opinion, when it came to versing someone who's not technically a VRC boxer, what was it like, kind of in your mindset, like during recording that video? Like what was some of the things going on in your mind?
So I do face off against a lot of people who are inexperienced a lot, and this is just on going into public servers a lot. And the thing out of it is, at least when I think, and this is when I think forward on the person I deal, I always have this little algorithm, and I always have these little equations that go off in my head like all the time. And I can always, at any time, if people ask me, I can always just pull up the little prints and other notes that I always saved that I actually will hand out to other people, so they have the opportunity to learn if I can actually sit down and explain everything to them, with the differences of, at least the differences of things that go through my mind for the fights that I have of facing other people who are inexperienced. One, it's because my mind will never stop thinking of the idea of I can always learn something, and if not something, then I can always use this as training, regardless of their experience level, regardless of like how they ideal fight. Especially people who come in there and they like to cheat, who are clearly inexperienced, and they basically use gimmicks to try to fight forward. Those are even more opportunities to sit there and try to be like, this person's experience, but they also want to try to use other advantages to try to win. My first thought, and when I see people like that in particular, is straight up, how do I win, but do it genuinely? Because I would think that if there's a style or a way that people choose to do, there's a weakness for it. There's a way to actually beat it. If it exists, it can also be defeated. If it exists, there's a solution for it. So ideally, in between like negative side of those type of people who like to come and try to do that, I will always also share this with other people. Like, then I know that they're cheating, and I know that this is what they're doing, but figure out a way how to beat it and do it genuinely. Because I know everybody has the capability. At least those who are experienced, I know they all have a capability of being able to do that. Because the moment they rise over the darkness, I promise you, the feeling of being able to do that, even if they are a little bit tilted, it's a good feeling. Now, for those who are inexperienced but still want to try to fight genuinely and they want to have the opportunity to learn, first thing that I'm looking for, and this is also the other reason why I love doing public instances all the time, at least for myself, is because the ideal of potential that is always unknown, and I'm still always waiting to see more. I'm always waiting to find more of that ideal potential, which is why I'm always so like excited to try to fight people who are new and not necessarily inexperienced. I'm really rather more looking for more talent, not for my team, but just in general the potential for VRC boxing. Period. Because of course, everyone has their own path that they want to take, and the ideal of whatever team that they want to choose if they want to get into it. But the ideal of potential is what I enjoy out of it. So being able to fight people who are inexperienced and they want to do it genuinely, they actually want the path and ideal of having the potential to become a good boxer or become a good VRC boxer. Those are the people that I'll work with, indefinitely. Where that might be the most time that I will talk while I'm fighting somebody. Because when they give me that ideal potential or they like impress me in some way, that I'm like, they actually have the want that they want to be able to be better, then I'll sit there and I will go over of doing something simple. Like for instance, in Roy's video, one of the three people on Random Instance that I was fighting, you can hear me actually allocating straight to him, like, I keep throwing the same punch at you. And I need you to try to work your brain and then try to figure out why am I doing this.
Right, be in the moment.
Pretty much. And that's the thing is, I like, even though it might be a little aggressive, like I'm actively wanting to try to teach them, of like trying to learn on demand while you're fighting me at the same time to adapt to me to try to do something different and be able to learn to get better in that instant.
No, absolutely. It's kind of, it's a I don't want to say it's like an aggressive like training tactic, but it's definitely like a good training tactic in the sense of like you are trying to give them the opportunity to use their mind while it's going in the action versus, doing like, training against a dummy. You're giving them on site experience, I guess is what I'm trying to go for. That's a weird way of phrasing it, but that's kind of what I'm going for. But it is
Yeah.
really, that's a really good way to train people, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's boxing or anything. The best type of training is in the moment training, and that goes with, event hosting or moderation or, you know, any other sport or anything else out there too. You can't just do practice all the time. You actually have to go against the real thing to kind of learn how to adapt to, the surroundings and the capabilities of what you can do, which is really cool. So obviously, kind of to go more into you specifically, because obviously you've had many matches over, over the year that you've been doing VRC boxing. So I guess kind of one of the things I wanted to ask, um, because you've gone through so many matches with whether it's, random instances or, at like events and stuff, was there ever a match in particular that in your eyes was probably one of the best matches you've had, or like a highlight match that you like will always hold a place in your heart?
There are actually quite an amount that do always come to mind that I always keep in memory to me because during my journey, during my time of going into VRC boxing over the year, there I'll always say that yes, I didn't have help on growing and making my journey there, but there were always certain people who stuck out to me in particular. And the first person during my experience was is a person who's actually on my team now. He's a fighter for me, and they go by Tamuki Fox. They're the first person I've ever had a draw with, a direct tie of the same exact score from start to finish, which I didn't think was possible. But being able to see with my own eyes and then working hard to try to get that win, it ended up being in a draw. I still jumped for joy. I still screamed all the same. I was like, "Holy shit! I actually got a draw with somebody. I'm an equal level with someone." I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I did. At the time, I thought it was the coolest thing ever at that time. And they're the first person I ever had gotten. That's the first person I ever gotten a draw with. And at least a couple times after that, it was a battle of just being able to see like who can be better at that point. And second one I can list off was the first person who I ever started actually sparring with on a normal basis. And now because even though I didn't really communicate about it that much, for me, I saw this as opportunity of like this person has a formidable amount of skill that I actually want to learn from without actually talking. And that person was Tony is cool. Honestly, I don't know where he's been lately. Wholeheartedly in the community, kind of disappeared with the other amount of names who I knew at the time. But them, I won't forget about him ever because they're the first person I ever started sparring with, and there's those days where I started to really learn and grow the fastest. And at the time of me being able to get my reputation up and me getting the wins that I did to establish my presence for people starting to know who I was. Because after that point, then I branched off on my own. Then I met a name. If you get into VRC boxing, you will hear about this at some point. This name is Kobold, okay, who at least I would title as the wild child. This full body fighter user is by far the craziest, and I will always admit the most entertaining fighter you probably will ever see in VRC boxing. This person, wholeheartedly, you'll see them do capoeira, you'll see them do possible like front flips and other like, breakdancing moves all over the floor and everything, and still get up and hit the meanest crit you ever see in your life.
That's crazy. That just hearing about it is crazy.
I promise you, full assurance, Kobold is one insane fighter. I fought with them multiple different times. I've beaten them a couple times already, and wholeheartedly, they're one of my top favorites to always fight. Always, they're in my top 5 people to always favorite to fight. The other couple about like 2 more really. The other fights I have in mind is one with a person who's named Nova, who admittedly is my second favorite Australian. I'm gonna be honest. They're my second favorite Australian. They to this day is the one person who I would go head to head with and constantly sit there and battle with them all day. And during my time of being able to spar with them, going back and forth, it turned into what felt like a brotherhood between us both. Off of just battling, going back and forth, like they win some, I win some, and just being able to learn and pick up from that. Because little did I know of the time I actually enjoyed of being able to fight with them. That was, I can admit, probably the fastest growing point of my establishment in VRC boxing. Because when I was battling them, I was going back and forth with them and kind of using it as the ideal training. Because then at that point, it was established that now I had some type of help at that point. That was when I really hit my placement in VRC boxing before I started a team. because at first it was just me and them going back and forth on fights, and then being able to learn from each other on techniques, where our weaknesses are, and how can we adapt to them. So at least on both of our fighting styles, I'm very straightforward and linear, and he is one hell of a hook meister. So in our own way, we're pretty much the yin yang of each other, of dealing with the opposite type of styles, and we both just enjoyed it. And the last person in mind is Zircon. Other people in the community don't like him too much, even though personally for me, I actually like the guy wholeheartedly. All things considered, out of my own personal past, he's the one person who I would let talk to me about Christianity and all that other stuff. He's the one person I'll let talk to me about all that type of stuff. But dealing with him, I've heard this a lot, where people would come up to me and they would tell me, one day I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna beat you, right? But Zircon is the only person out of everybody who's ever told me that, who I can say actually did it. It took him almost a full year to finally beat me. And I was so happy for him when he did, genuinely, that we actually got together and took pictures of that day when he actually beat me right after. I was more than happy to give it to him, because like, he genuinely worked for that. So he's so hard. He worked for that. He genuinely tried to learn more on not only just fighting against full-body people. He learned more on fighting me on a normal basis, learning what I do, learning my techniques, and regardless of it being a close match, he finally got the win. And honestly, I was happy for him.
That's what's up, man. I would say, it's very wholesome in the end, saying it took, a whole year, to get to that point. Well, that's what's up, man. And definitely, like, if you have anything, feel free to like send it my way, like, of any of these fighters, because I'm definitely interested, in seeing what they can do.
Some of them I have.
Yeah. So as you've been going through all these matches, obviously you did started, doing more VRC boxing, like official like events, like, the whole USA side of VRC boxing, which not a lot of people know about. Unfortunately, I wish more people knew about it. I didn't even know about it, to be fair. But so kind of like, what was it like kind of getting into like the US side of like VRC boxing? Like, what kind of sparked that side of like your VRC boxing career?
So being able to do USA side of the entire community, even though that's mostly where I stuck around just by default of time zones as what it is, I always say that it was the idea behind getting that sense of what is it, like questioning what is a community here. And I can actually say, for anybody else who's trying to understand, is like, that is a difficult question right at first, especially if you're new to the scene, because like, it's not the first thing you're gonna see. I can always say that, guarantee. This will not be the first thing that you will see. It's rather more something that you gotta kind of actually ask around and be able to try to find, so that you'll be able to see exactly what the positive end of the community for VRC boxing in USA is. An ideal of being able to start it, getting into it. There was also around the same time I was building the friendship with Noved, where at some point we both got together and we started talking, and both of us were like, we should make our own teams, man. And we'll be able to make our own teams and see like what can we do with it. He turned, it's like me and him at the same time. We both established our teams, and we both started recruiting in our own different ways right after that. But understanding the community on the surface for what it is, if you're going to start with anybody in question, I would always say between two people who are named Vanilla Chan and Daku Fenrir. Those two are by far are the first establishments of USA side for the community in general. Because as it is, you can always find this in the world, and in its perspective order. that these two were the first champions of VRC boxing. They both came from USA, and the champions after that are all pretty much like Korean and Japanese after them too. But because of them two and their establishment into USA boxing, they pretty much sparked off the idea of progressing the community and then starting to create what is the USA side of the of VRC boxing. And it was through them also that I met them that really gave me the idea of there's some type of professionalism here that I never knew about. But after I met them, I knew that it existed, even if I didn't see it. I knew that it existed because I saw the ideal, not authority, but like kind of, I guess, in this case, I'll just say aura, just kind of make sense. I guess like, you could tell by the ideal aura that they had when they're inside the ring, when they're inside of the community in general, that they have that ideal kind of authority, not by staff, but just by their experience, the ideal experience, their skills, what they have to bring. And after having my experience of fighting them for the first time, that ended up in a 3-2 situation right out the gate. They were been impressed off of how I did for the first time, and they was just like, you know, you got a little bit of skill going on, and you can learn this, and that. I'm like, okay, I can work with it.
Hell yeah. No, that's awesome. I'll say, because it's definitely, you know, as you kind of said, it started from somewhere, but kind of growing as we, you know, it's still growing to this day, you know. So that's really cool that, you know, you guys have made progress in that regard. You know, because obviously you guys have your own systems in play for your community, but you also have systems in mind for, you know, the USA side of VRC boxing. Hello, everyone. Real quick, just want to pause the episode right here. I want to personally thank this month's monthly tippers, Sash Lilik and Lion Turtle. Also, make sure to join the VRC group at noved.6608 and join the Discord because we have so many amazing events coming up this summer that you don't want to miss. I'll be performing over at VRillium Horizons event on June 14th, which is also my birthday, funny enough. I will also be exhibiting and working over at Project Fest 2025 from June 27th to July 6th, and also exhibiting and DJing at Forhaversadio Cosmico on July 26th and 27th. Of course, as always, if you're coming back to check out some of the other episodes, why not hit that subscribe button? You're already coming back anyway. But with that, let's get back into the episode. Woo! You know, so I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask, since we're kind of talking about, you know, different communities inside of VRC boxing. So, has C.O.A. Boxing done any events collaboratively with other VRC boxing communities, or is it just kind of been mainly like the USA side of VRC boxing?
Oh, so C.O.A. boxing as a whole, at least with collaboration with others in general, I was the first, at least I was the first, at least of record, to collaborate with another team to make co-op practices happen. We've had our own little smaller events of other things that we do sometimes, because maybe I'll like do like a full practice and have it by schedule to, all right, we do practice, we get to work, we do what we need to do, and then maybe towards the end, then we'll go ahead and do a full like activity or something, like take them to like a game mode or whatever. But working with the teams, it's always been an indefinite of making sure that we can establish a community together. Even though we'll like have our official league matches and we'll fight with each other, that's fine. And then that's all a part of the idea of the season and the different teams in the league. But to make sure that ideal of toxicity and ideal of negativity and even keeping it real with you, of being ghetto or none of that stuff like that, we make sure that we have the ideal of sense of community is important just as much as making sure professionalism is just as important too. That's first and foremost. Secondly, collaborating with other teams, I would have to talk with them in general because each team has their different style for how they like to run their practices, just as much as their tryouts and how their community functions and runs. To like, okay, I'm in a conversation with with the team's owner. and we will sit there and discuss on how we're going to make a collaboration of our team work and how we're going to make it operate so that we would have an official co-op practice, or like other occasions, other teams like to have scrimmages with each other, as another example. Even though sometimes they didn't go out the best, I still love the idea that these other teams, official team or not, they had the strive on ideal to be like, we want to scrimmage, we want to testify ourselves, we want to be like, okay, how much power do we really got, or how much skills do we really got to learn from one team to another. Establishing the ideal co-op practices and making sure that they're down on record, especially with other official teams, to make this happen. It's still relatively new as of today on being able to do co-op practices with other teams, but so far, the ones that I worked with and the ones that I hope to continue to work with, they have so far been great. They have so far not had issues. It actually worked out just fine with the different styles that we have, and came up with a plan, man, make it work.
Oh, that's what's up. It's always good to adapt to other people's way of kind of doing things, and kind of being able to give and take on that front. Because a lot of people, when it comes to leadership, they're usually pretty adamant. Not this. I'm just speaking in general terms here. Just disclaimer right here. But most people, they're pretty finite on like how they want to do things, et cetera, et cetera. But it's always nice to adapt and kind of learn how other people do things, just in case, like, oh, this part is a good idea. Maybe we should try implementing that, or whatever the case may be. So being able to adapt is definitely well, I mean, it's a great skill in boxing overall, as we all know. But I'll say, it's definitely a good thing when it comes to like being a group leader, and being a community manager, being able to have that sense of adaptability. Kind of to go a little bit further in depth with the community side a little bit, because obviously you guys have been around for a while. So going from when you first started till now, did you think you would be where you're at today?
Well, no, not at all, because I don't hold the ideal of expectations forward, because um, at least I don't see the point of holding expectations and stuff like that. I really don't understand the point of it, to me, because if you're going to be doing an experience, or if you're going to be trying to do something, why would you have the expectation of some type of success or some type of failure in general if that much of a future is unknown, unless you really know the ideal behind what you're getting into? You usually already did all the homework for all that. I didn't have none of the homework for none of that, so I'm not going to sit there and have expectations on me succeeding or failing through it. But at least in regards to its progression, it's like I'm doing the best that I can out of trying to understand my team as much as trying to understand the community and its flow. Because even now, still the flow of the community in general on a normal public instance basis is still changing piece by piece.
No, fair. I mean, that's definitely a really good take on that, to say the least. Um, Damn. Sorry, that took me back a
I'm
second.
being honest with it though,
No, no, it's
because like,
facts.
because like because like if you're trying anything out of an experience period at all, how would you have the expectation on succeeding or failing? It's an experience. It's an ideal of trial and error that you will progress throughout your time of whatever it is that you're doing.
No, absolutely. It's it could be a flip of a coin where you try something new, and as long as you keep going with it, you can always improve and do this and that. I mean, that goes no different with anything else that people do. That's an overall good piece of advice. Because nobody expects to be viral, or nobody expects to be like, I don't even know what the proper wording. Brain is going burr with that comment. But But it's speaking facts though. At the end of the day, and kind of to go into that side of things a little bit, because obviously, as you had stated, it is a the boxing side is a subsection of the main community, Cult of Aaru. So what exactly is Cult of Aaru, and like what exactly entails in that community?
Cult of Aaru is the main community that I run, that the idea of it is supposed to be like a group of misfits and collectively as a home for them. That was his main objective. That's his main goal. Currently going through a little theme behind it that is actually going to end up changing soon. Once I get back into focusing on main community, and I'm pretty much already settled in enough with the boxing division to make sure that I left enough that I can have other people from my team to start kind of helping me run it. So then by the time I get them to have the responsibility and list the idea of responsibility and having a good initiative together, that I can then be like, okay, now at this point I don't have to really like worry about it too much anymore, and I can go back to fix my main community up because I took so much time into my boxing one mostly. But as it is for right now, Cultivar at its sense, especially when I was really active in it, was a things that hold smaller events, small gatherings together to be able to come together and do something with it, but to still have open ideals, like maybe want to have a burn night or just a gathering in general to try to have other people come around and try to connect with each other. And through some of those things, I met some other amazing people. I met some other like smaller people who were so new to the idea of VR and other stuff like that, and actually turned out great. Some of them not so much, and you know what? That's okay, because the ideal of the experience behind my ideal of raising a home out of misfits, some will be good, other ones will not, and I'm okay with that. But it's still an open community regardless, and still going to be open opportunities to still come together and still be able to try to come to play games. Still going to try to be able to connect and be with other people and learn who each other is.
Oh yeah, of course. In most communities, you'll have your good people, you'll have the not so good people. It growing pains is what I like to call it.
That's it.
There's always, no matter what community anybody in VR chat or any platform for that matter runs, there's always people are people at the end of the day, right? you know but that's really cool that you do host, like, these smaller, I hate to say smaller, you know what I mean, but like it's
No,
nice
it's perfectly fine.
these gatherings and stuff, to kind of do something different, I guess, in that regard. For people who may not fit in other places, whatever the case may be. That is really cool. That's really wholesome. I was gonna make a joke of like, you're gonna make these misfits into fighters, but I was, but
The wholeheartedly, like I would honestly say, like, you're actually not even that too far off about it, because yes, because I gave the open opportunity also with that itself too in the community, be like, I'm starting a VRC Boxing Team. Anybody want to come by and try it? Like, go ahead. I still give the opportunity out there as what it is, period. But and release, but don't worry about calling it smaller, because wholeheartedly it's honestly has been, and honestly always has been small and function, and out of functionality for C.O.A boxing as a whole too. We also started off really small when we were unofficial, and during that time, wholeheartedly, we were the smallest team to be able to officially participate in the league. We were the smallest team to ever participate. When we first started, we only had 6 people on roster, and that was including me. That was all that we had. And our first matchup was against the biggest team that there was, and we actually could, and at least from what they told me face to face, is that we actually still could have won that. But my ideal was, I did the switch up on purpose. I admit it, as I will admit it, I did technically throw it on purpose, because I would rather have I would rather have us lose to learn and understand of an ideal placement for us boxing and us learning than to just be the team who just came out of nowhere and just won against the biggest team. Because that's an ideal type of ego and type of and a type of mentality I do not want. That's a whole type of opposite of a mentality I don't want. So admittedly, during that time, I did make a switch and I did throw on purpose so that I would rather lose to get them to learn than to sit there and win and just have one hell of a type of high head the whole time. Because even though we could have won that wholeheartedly as the smallest team on record to still participate and make it happen, I like the idea of learning and being able to grow from wherever we're at way better than just being able to win.
Fair enough. I mean, that I'm not gonna lie, that sounded out of a movie. I'm not even gonna front, but but no, I mean, overall, that is really wholesome. Um, that is it's definitely a way to make it into a learning experience that I mean, as you say, it's possible you could have went through and done that, but what would have been the outcome of that? It could have been a whole different situation at the end of the day. As I'm like adjusting my chair, don't mind me. But
No, you're fine. You're fine.
but it's definitely cool to see what got you where you are today. Especially within the league and going into this as a smallest community and going the distance essentially to where it is now. Because obviously it's not easy to run a community, let alone a community that mainly has focused in a totally different region. With VRC boxing being more Japanese focused than US focused, it's definitely a lot, because and this goes with any communities that are more region based, because there are a lot out there that mainly focus, and it goes both ways. There's a lot of American communities that do it very well, compared to Japanese or any Asia, European, whatever. There's always going to be something that can be learned from or experienced from other regions, and I full heartedly believe that. A really good example. I know I'm tangenting on this a second, but I'll say when it comes to role play communities, right? You have ones that are focused, during EU centric times. You have ones that are US centric times. And all of them are completely different experiences. It doesn't even matter the theming of the role play itself. They're all ran different. They're all, maintained different. The events run different. There's always something to learn by going to different things, and it's no different than VRC boxing. You go to different, events within VRC boxing, and it's going to be, to some extent, obviously there's rules and regulations for like leagues and everything. But when it comes to community side, there's always going to be something different between all those. I'm kind of teetering back into one of the previous topics, I know, but it's definitely the main thing is there's a lot of learning experiences when it comes to doing community work and teaching people in the community to essentially do what you do, if not more. um so I guess kind of one of the questions in this regard, because obviously you had said earlier that you're teaching some of your people to kind of run what you do with the boxing side of things. So kind of going into that, what is a piece of advice that you could give for any group leaders, in your personal opinion, or maybe future group leaders, when it comes to like teaching people like community side and how to run like a community? What's like one piece of advice you can give?
I would actually think first about knowing knowing your community's hearts just as much as knowing your own first. Because I have seen and sometimes have been a part of other communities that have failed already. And that has always been strangely, it's always been because they didn't make a good alignment with their people. They didn't make a good alignment with their community like that. And at least how I see it is open the door to your community first to be able to talk to you and genuinely have the ideal of being able to take criticism in some way, shape, or form. Because you running a community or running even a team, as a perfect example as it is, you have to be able to know your players. You have to be able to know your community members. Because if you don't know them like that, and you just got people just coming in like that without you even giving the effort or the time of day to be able to actually work with them or at least be able to talk with them, then you're pretty much just gonna be just unknown, or you're just gonna be like that guy and that they just so happen to know, with nothing else in between. Because it's one thing when you have your ideal of reputation that you establish with whatever it is that you're doing. But if you aren't able to connect and pretty much be one with the community, then you're not really going to have a community base to even build with. You're not even going to have your ideal numbers that some people may want, because at that point, your numbers are just numbers. They didn't have value behind them to even begin with. And that's what makes it so tough for other people in communities. So at least I would wholeheartedly say, at least make the effort to know your community, to know their hearts, to know who they are. If you at least try to make that effort and it's recognizable, at least if they're not too blind to it, then you have an actual community to work with. You have an actual base of value that you can operate with.
No, 100%. It's always wise advice, to keep the heart of the community in mind, because obviously you kind of mentioned this earlier, and it's a true statement. Communities come and go, right? There's bad actors, or there's potential issues within the community, or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of reasons why a community can fall. But at the end of the day, it's definitely, it's just a part of life, right? It's no different than going in real life, and you're with a friend group, somebody did something, or people move apart, or people literally move across the country, world, whatever the case may be. Um, as we all know, these things happen in life. You want to keep your head in the right place when these things happen, and keep pushing forward. I believe there's a funny quote that is very cliche, but it is, it's very true. Um, I'm probably gonna butcher this quote. Editor, feel free to just put the quote like down here. But it's not about how hard you get hit, but how many times. It's about how you get back up from getting hit. I fucking butchered that quote. I know I did. Just put the quote down here.
It's not about how many times you get knocked down. It matters how many times you get back up.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's same metaphor. Um, but it's always, you have to be persistent. You have to be willing to push forward and move on from whatever happened in the past. And I say move on, I mean truly move on, not let it linger, don't hold a grudge. I mean truly move on. You know, it hurts. The past hurts, but at the end of the day, you know, for the most part, within legal reason, I have to knock on wood real quick. But you can't let the past define you. We as humans change every day. You just got to keep pushing forward within legal reason. But I always got to say that. For legal reasons, I always got to say that. but yeah, man. I'll say, because obviously, you know, because you've been around VRC for a while, um, but kind of making this community and then this boxing, subsidiary of said community. Obviously, a lot has gone into it. At the end of the day, um, so I guess kind of one of the final questions, because we are running a little bit out of time. Um, to be fair, this did not feel like almost an hour, but so kind of to go, into the future of COA and COA boxing. What are some of the things we can expect from you guys when it comes to like your community or maybe some of the boxing side of things?
I cannot guarantee the team growing to heights that people may think it is, especially with knowing me first before knowing the team. But I can guarantee an ideal of the team itself, and especially with me, will be growing on making sure that we can justify, or no, wrong word, not justify, that we can exercise our team code first and foremost, and try to share that with the community to make a more positive environment, which our code of question is we followed our hands, not ignorance. Because as it is in public instances on a normal basis, it's a lot of that you'll get on USA side, and it can be overwhelming. It can be actually downgrading to new people and new players alike. It honestly does that. I could always say that USA side is not in the best of conditions, and at least for me, exercising from where I am within the staff, what I want is I want an ideal better community out of USA, because keeping it real, I wish USA side was like the Japanese servers so much. I wish they were, because if you ever have the opportunity, I know it's a little bit of a side tangent, but I got to tell you this about VRC boxing.
Go for it.
The Japanese servers wholeheartedly, it is like a dream when you go in there. It is literally like a dream out of the game. It is a whole different experience. It is a whole different feel to it. Even if you don't understand what they're saying, watch what they do. Because at least every time that I've been in there and they gotten to know me and they gotten used to me, that I can visit anytime and talk with the world creator and all that just fine. Where wholeheartedly, Japanese servers, they're organized. They have it together. They're not overly like rowdy against each other. They're not over screaming at each other. They're not doing and all that negative stuff. They even line up in order. They actually line up in order. They take turns, and when they do the trainings together with Mr. Torisan himself, wholeheartedly, it's amazing to watch. Like, I get excited every time I be able to go in there. I get excited every time I go in there. It's amazing to watch because you see him and his little representative sit in the center and actively work with teaching people boxing, and everybody's following along. They're all working out at the same time. They have their own starting exercises. They all have the time when they're done, and every time that they are finished, they always take like a picture at the end with everybody who came by and participated and stuff like that. And it's so cool to watch. And some of us, at least team wise, we're all working in our own as well as trying to be able to work together to make something like that. Because actually, imagine that as an idea. You walk into a USA lobby publicly, people are waiting in line. They're actually being patient. They're not yelling at each other. They're not over here arguing all the time. They're genuinely come there, good sportsmanship, good athleticism, and being able to actually work with each other. That is an ideal dream that I want to see at least one time. That's what I want so bad. Just getting off of that and making sure to stay on topic, just future COA boxing, like my dream of that, and that of an ideal of making at least a good team in behavior and at heart first before skill, is the practice of servitude that I want to bring forward to not only the team, but also to the community of VRC boxing, period.
No, wholeheartedly. That's what's up, man. And definitely, yeah, if you haven't, checked out VRC Boxing as is, we'll leave a link down in the description for some of the VRC Boxing stuff. Definitely make sure to go check all that stuff out. Speaking of links and stuff, before we do end things off, I do want to give you a chance to tell the people where they can find you, all the links for your community, your groups, all that stuff. Anything you want on the screen in the description. But yeah, feel free to tell them where they can find you.
I'm always free and open on Discord of Yagi Kuzumaki, just smashed together. I'm perfectly fine with having DMs. I'm perfectly fine with being able to talk with people in general. You'll be able you like hardly if you go into VRC boxing public instances, you'll probably find me, if not surrounded by certain people or a number of people all the time, but I'm just come say hi or just come in general. Just let me know when you see me or anything like that, and I'll be able to talk. I don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, all the links for the VRC groups and Discords and all that will all be down in the description. So make sure to go check all those links out. Yagi, thank you so much for coming on. This is kind of a blast to kind of learn a little bit more about you and learn more about C.O.A. boxing.
I'm more than happy to be here for it. It's just ideally, even though you wanted to give me this time, and I'm well appreciative of it. I'm honestly I'm on the focus of trying to get VRC boxing on the map. That's what I pretty much want right now. So I want to try to be able to get VRC boxing on the map for people to try to come out and try it and be able to give it more notice, as it honestly deserves. Because at least just a quick another side note, people would because this is something that people don't know unless they really ask and get deep into it. For people who actually do know this, VRC boxing as a game, just as much as it is a community, actually functions with the Real Life Boxing Association over in Japan. They actually work contentiously real hand in hand with this to make this game possible, as well as that's also what they learned from. For us in USA side and exercising the summer league that just kicked off, we're also utilizing the Real American Boxing Association rule set that we're implementing into the rules to progress with the professionalism that will be also put on YouTube and such.
Yeah, and definitely make sure to go check out the summer league stuff as well. There should be some stuff if there's not already. There should be some stuff on YouTube. I think it's June 21st as of today when this video airs. So definitely make sure to go check out some of the stuff. Like I said, all the links for VRC Boxing, as well as some of the Summer League stuff. We'll update the description. So if it's not up yet, check back in a couple weeks and maybe there'll be something there. But yeah, all the links will be down in the description. So please make sure to go check all that stuff out. But yeah, with that, ladies, gentlemen, everybody inside and outside the ballpark, this has been it for episode 69 of the Noved podcast. I want to thank you all so much. Funny number, ha ha ha. But I want to thank you all so much for watching, listening, depending on what platform you're on. And of course, if you're coming to check out some of the other episodes, why not hit that subscribe button? You're already coming back anyway. But with that, I want to thank you all one last time for watching, listening, depending on what platform you're on. And I will see you in the next episode. Take care and peace. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Noved.